Hilchas Tumas Tzara'as Perek Chi. Hakel Mistamim Ben Goyim. Everyone could become Tommy Ben Goyim. There's no specific age and there's no specific gender. Hakel Mistamim Ben Goyim. Afilu Cotton Ben Yemi. And also Vohavodim, someone that's an Evet Knaini, so he's Chai B'mitzvahs Kiisha, he also could become Tommy Ben Goyim. Avolei Goy, someone that's not Jewish cannot become Tommy Ben Goyim. We learned even earlier that if you had a Goy had a nega while before he was Jewish, and then he became a ger, so Memela that nega is not matam because the nega was there already earlier, unless the nega changed colors. Volei Goy and Volei Ger Teshav, even a Ger Teshav. Ger Teshav was someone that was makabel on himself to keep the Sheva Mitzvahs B'neiach, and he got a din of a Ger Teshav, and therefore he's allowed to live in Eretz Yisrael. He's allowed to live in Eretz Yisrael, which ain't makabel Ger Teshav bisman shein hayevel neig. But I'll call upon Volei Ger Teshav. So a goy or a Ger Teshav cannot become Tommy Ben Goyim, but a yid and even a Evet Knaini could become Tommy Ben Goyim. That's din number one. And din number two is Vakel Ksherim Liris Goyim. Everyone is kosher liris anagoyim, which means only on the condition that you know how you know the din in the goyim. Like we'll learn Behamshach, that in order to paskin on the goyim, you have to be someone that knows sayin negi odim, sayin negi begodim, and sayin negi batim. And anyone of that, someone in that caliber, could be a royas negoyim and make a decision whether the nega is a nega or not. Now lepel to make a person tummy or tar, that depends on the kohen, like what the Rambam is going to say in the next halacha. But to say the halacha whether or not he's Tommy or Tor is hakel kshedim liris anagoyim to paskin about the nega. There's two dinim. There's paskening about the nega, and then there's establishing whether the nega is Tommy or Tor, which comes only through divrei hakein. So we're saying hakel kshedim liris anagoyim on the condition that he's a person that's royal as which means even Evet Knaini could be the person that's royal anagoyim. Obviously, he can't establish that this person is Tommy or Tor, but he could tell the Kohen to say Tommy or say Tor if this Evet Knaini would be someone that's a learned person. V'hakil kshein liris hanagoyim, that's number one. And secondly, v'chol hanagoyim odem reyesim. A person could see the nagoyim of every person. In other words, you could see the nagoyim of a relative. You're allowed to see the nagoyim of a relative and decide whether or not this nega is a nega Tommy. Chutz min nigeyatzmi, except for your own nagoyim, person has a nega on himself, so he can't go ahead and paskin on his nega whether or not it's a nega or not a nega. Then he has to have someone else that should paskin, and then there has to be a kohen which should establish whether that he's tummy or that he's tor. So nachamol. So basically, the din is that everyone could become tummy bin goyim, even an evet, and even a cotton bin yemen, even evet knaini, and everyone is kosher liris an goyim. Everyone's kosher liris an goyim, and kol an goyim adam reya chutz min nigeyatzmi. The Rebbe brings, and Kutsichas brings a pshat that v'chol ha'negoyim adam reya, all the negoyim that a person sees, v'chol ha'negoyim adam reya, chutz, which he sees outside of himself, comes minigei atzmi. It's based on the Vart and Baal Shem Tov, that when a person sees a chsar by someone else, it's a right, the chsar is by yourself. So that's the remez in this halacha. V'chol ha'negoyim adam reya ism chutz. The negoyim that a person sees outside of himself really comes minigatzmi, comes ultimately minigatzmi. Halacha beis. Aval pisha akel ksherim liris negoyim, abahatum v'hatara tluya b'koyin, like we mentioned. Anyone is kosher liris negoyim to say the halacha, but lepel saying the halacha doesn't establish the tara and the tumah. Kein sheini yedel liris is a chacham riyeu. The chacham is the one that sees the nega, and he has to be someone that knows the hilchas negoyim, like we'll learn. Ve'emerli emer tamei. You should say Tommy, Vakein Omer Tommy, Emer Tor, Vakein Omer Tor, Hasgire, to lock him, to put him in quarantine, Hasgire, Shnema Valpiem Yia Kolivan V'chol Nega. So Al Pidivri Hakein comes the Negoim based on the words of the Kohen. When the Kohen says Tommy, he becomes Tommy, and when the Kohen says Tor, he becomes Tor. Now Filo Hoya Kohen Cotton, a Shaita. So the Cotton really doesn't know anything. Nevertheless, Hachachim Ein Malay, V'hu Machlit. He says that it's muchlet, a poiter. He says he's potter, a seger. So this din is that the person, anyone could go ahead and make the decision about the nega, make the decision on the nega, but on the other hand, he can't actually establish the nega. So when you see a nega and the person, the chacham, says that it's a nega which is tzarech hezger or tzarech lahachlit, so then the kohen goes ahead and is mazger and machlit. Now, b'medvar mamurim, that when the kohen says something after the chacham said that it was lahasger, lahachlit, is kshag hoya koyin semach al divrei hachacham. Whereas the chacham was the one that saw it, and the koyin is accepting the words of the chacham, and based on what the chacham said, he's saying that it's lahazgir lahachlit ilifted. Avalim hoya koyin reya v'semach al atzmi. The koyin considered him; he was really being semach al atzmi, and he himself is not a chacham. Because you have a chacham seeing it, and the chacham tells the kohen that you should go and say this and this, and the kohen taka says this and this, but he's saying not what he's saying based on what the chacham said. He's saying based on what he's saying based on what he's himself thinking. Im hoya kohen rei v'semach al atzmi osule liris nege b'chol hanegoyim ad sheyiren rabbi, until his rabbi will teach him the yiyah boki b'chol hanegoyim ubishmnisayim. In order for the kohen to be able to be rei in the goyim, or anyone to be rei in the goyim, there has to be someone that's a baki b'chol hanegoyim ubishnisayim b'nigi adam kulam ub'nigi b'godim ub'nigi bat. It's just again bekitzer. Anybody could go ahead and paskin about negoyim, but lepel to establish that the nega is tummy or the nega is torah depends on the kohen. And when the person says that, when the person that's a chacham knows that it's tummy, it's torah, he tells the kohen to say tummy, to say torah, to say masgir or muchlet, and then the kohen says it, so memele it's chal. Now the kohen has to say something based on what the chacham is saying. Mashenkin, if the kohen is saying something based on himself, he's not really saying something based on what the chacham is saying. So then it's only if he was mekabel mirabe and he's baki b'chol hanegoyim. Whereas as long in order for the kohen to base on himself, he has to be a person that's baki b'chol hanegoyim. And even though he's only seeing now a mare basa, so l'chor it's only negate to know the dinim of mare basa, a nege basa. Nevertheless, in order for him to be moire b'negoyim, and what he's saying should have a should be chal, is only if he knows side the dinim of nege basar and side of a person nege adam, nege b'godim u'b'nege bat. Halacha gimel. Kohen shetime esator, a tir esatome, a kohen that went ahead and pronounced someone that was really tor tome, or pronounced someone that was really tome tor, is le'eseklum shenamar tome hu v'timi yakein, tor hu v'tir yakein. So it's not enough that the kohen said it. The kohen has to say it only if he's really tor. But on the other hand, if he's really tor, he's only tor if the kohen says so. So you need both. And in reality, he has no nega anymore. Nevertheless, he remains tummy. At least the kohen announces and pronounces him to be tor. Halacha dalet. Eina kohen rashoy l'tami satome achi einov b'mkei manega be'era baser shechutzalei ube'era baser shechutzalei. Whereas he has to see the nega, and he can't just see the nega. He has to see the nega biyachas also to the skin which is around the nega. Then he establishes the color of the nega biyachas to the skin. That's din number one. Then nachadin v'kein shira nega b'tchila, the kohen that actually saw the nega originally, hu sheriyeo b'seif shavua rishon. He's the one that should see him at the end of the week after the hezger, or b'seif shavua sheni. V'hu shemazgire. He's the one that's mazgir the kohen a machlite a petre. That's the normal seder. The same kohen that was the original kohen that you went to, he's the one that puts him into hezger or into hechlit, and after hezger or shavua, you go back to the same kohen. Now, mesa kohen shira'ot chila, the original kohen that saw him died, a shechola, and you can't see him again, is then re'eo kohen acher. Then a second kohen can see him. And ve'in hasheni yochel l'tam be'esa be'pishin. The second kohen cannot be metami and bepishin. She'eni yedei posim leiposim. He doesn't really know whether it's spread. So no, since he didn't see him originally, so obviously he can't say whether it's spread or not. But he could say whether there's sarloven or a michya that he could say. So memela, if the first kohen is not around, so then you have a second kohen, and he can't be metami and bepishin. But on the other end, he could be metami with the other simon tuma. El rishin, the only one the rishin. She'eni yedei posim leiposa. Elarishin, that's the number one. Then v'nem al kein leimar nega zepasa. In other words, he has an amonis to say nega zepasa. V'nega zelepasa. In other words, lepeil mamish. If l'moshel the first kohen is going to tell the second kohen that it was pasa, the vice versa, the second kohen also cannot say pasa. In other words, he can't say it based on the edus of the first kohen. The original kohen that saw it, he could come along now and say nega zepasa, nega zelepasa. Mashenkin, a second kohen could never accept the edus of the first kohen and memela say pasa. That's v'nem and kohen leima nega zepasa v'nega zelei poser, and also the seir loven zeh kodem es habeheres, a beheres zu kodem es seir loven. Now, l'chura, I'm not sure. The l'chura, if he saw the beheres without a seir loven, so obviously he's nema to say that this seir loven came after the beheres, and memela it came before. And memela, so he's tummy. Now, how could he say that seir loven zu is before the beheres? I mean, how could he say that the seir loven was before the beheres? L'chura, he saw the beheres. When did he see the beheres? I mean, when there's only a seir loven and there's no beheres, l'chura, there's no point in coming to a kain, unless you have a person that had a beheres. The seir would be maybe a person had something that was really not a beheres; it was a bayak, and he had a seir loven, and then he came to the kain, and the kain sees that there's the seir loven here and a bayak, and then this bayak later on develops into a beheres. So Memele, he says no, that this bayak, this beheres was there, this seir loven was there before the beheres. So a kain is believed. A kain has an amonus to say that either this seir loven came after the beheres, because that's pashut. He saw the beheres first, and then later on he saw the seir loven, or no, he saw the seir loven first, and then later on he saw the beheres. He saw the seir loven first before there was befedish no beheres, and then later on he was a beheres. Why was he showing him the seir loven? Because maybe there was a bayak there, and he didn't know it was a bayak, so he thought it was a beheres. That would be the pashut pshat. Now, what would be how could there be a hechatimtza where a person comes along and the kohen sees the seir loven and the beheres, and then he says that this is Tomei Muchlit, because there's a beheres and a seir loven. The pashtus advarim is because since we don't know that the seir loven was kadma lebeheres, so then we'll assume that the beheres was kadma seir loven, because the seir loven is not a regular thing. The beheres, so a seir loven comes from a beheres. To assume that the beheres was there, that the seir loven was there before the beheres, we don't nemon. We don't nemon that the seir loven was there before the beheres. We nemon that the beheres was there before the seir loven, unless we know that there was the seir loven first. Now, what's this din of sofik kodma, sofik not kodma? So then we say that misofik is tummy, but the Rambam says that tum is only misofik. It's only midrabanan. It's only midrabanan dikatuma. So I'm not really sure. Is it possible for a person to come with a beheres and a seir loven the first time and be tummy minatera, or that would always be a question of sofik whether the beheres was kadma seir loven or the seir loven was kadma beheres. Halacha hey cholol posul rias negoyim shnamar echad mibonav hakenim. So we have to learn out bikun osam that echad mibonav there should be hakenim, there should be bikun osam, and a chol is mechul min hakuna. Aval bali mumen ksherin rias negoyim. It's not an aveda. A balmum is a kohen. Balmum is allowed to eat kachim. So memela balmum ksherim l'rias negoyim ubulvad shalei yasuma. He shouldn't be blind. Now, obviously, if his mom is blind, so obviously he can't see negoyim. But it means afilu ba'achas me'enov. Even if he's blind in one of his eyes, vafilu kohen shekoh me'er enov. That is me'er enov isn't so light; it's dark, whereas he doesn't have such good eyesight. Is also l'yiran sanegoyim. Shenema l'chol mareini hakein. So it has to be l'chol mareini hakein. That you should see with a full eyesight. It shouldn't be a shvacha eyesight. Halacha vov. Ein reinas hanegoyim ele bayim. Ben lahazger, ben lahachlid, ben lifter. When the kohen sees the nega and it says psak dina the nega, it has to be bayim. Shari b'chol inyan oimer bayim or bayim. That's number one. So it has to be bayim and not balayl. Now in bayim gufa, ve'in rein lei b'shachris v'lei bin arbayim v'lei b'tech habayis v'lei b'yim ha'mu'unan. So even if it's by day, it shouldn't be really in the morning. It shouldn't be at noon. It shouldn't be in a house, and it shouldn't be on a cloudy day. Why? Lefi shekeya nidas azeh. If it's in the morning, or it's in a cloudy day, so something that's really dark seems more light than it is. V'lei b'tzara'im, you shouldn't see it b'tzara'im. Lefi she'azeh nidas keya. So something that's very light, very strong, is nevertheless it seems darker, and it's because of the brightness of the sun. So this looks darker. So if in the morning, something that's not so strong will look stronger. During the noon, something that's stronger will look not so white. And when is the good time to see it? It should be outside, not when it's cloudy. B'shor revi'ez v'chamishes, on the 4th or 5th hour of the day. In other words, after a quarter of the day, before half of the day. And also, u'b'shminis u'b'tchias, in the 8th hour of the day or the 9th hour of the day. Bein nigiodam, bein nigiodam u'batim. That's a good time to see. and then you get an accurate color of the nega. In other words, if you see it too early in the morning, so it may look maybe actually dark and look lighter. If you see it during the noon, it may actually be very light and it'll look darker. So memela, so the right time to see it is either the 4th or 5th hour of the day, or the 8th or 9th hour of the day, and it should be seen outside and also not on a cloudy day. Halacha Zayin. B'chol yem reinas hanegoyim chutz mishabbos v'yontif. So now b'pashtus it means a person that sees a nega and he has it on Shabbos, he doesn't go to the kain. And there is on Yontif, he doesn't go to the kain. Now chol yem shvi shalei liyas b'Shabbos v'yontif. In other words, he had a nega on Sunday, and he saw the kain on Sunday, and the kain was masger him. And now on the 7th day, he's supposed to see the kain again. Or now on the 7th day, which is Yontif, he's supposed to see the kain again. Is mavinu lacherev. So you postpone seeing the kain for the next day. V'yesh bedover lahakol lahachmer. Now, by the fact that it was being postponed to be seen the kain on the next day rather than the original day, which was the 7th day, it could be for his benefit, lahakol, to be makel for this person that has the nega, or lahachmer, or it could be for a chumr from him. It could be that had he seen the kain on Shabbos, he would have announced him being tummy. And then once he was tummy, he'll have to go through the whole process of the Torah. Abu Lamacher, when he comes on Sunday, is Yelchelim Simoni Tumim. Mele he's Torah. He'll be paid to him. So Mele he never had to go through the process of the Torah. Ve'efsher Sheyeh Torah. It's possible that on Shabbos he would have been Torah. Now Torah over here, if he was Mamish Torah, and then on the next day he's tummy, so l'chor l'mayin of Gemina. The Torah could be in pashtus that he would be musgar. He would be musgar on the Shabbos. In other words, it could have been that on Shabbos he would have been Torah, which means not muchlet. Ulamachri yivoldele sumyoni tuma, which is muchlet. So if he would have seen him on Shabbos, so then he would have been masgar him. So then he would have waited till the end of the following week, and could be by the end of the following week, the simoni tuma would have gone. Masha'inkin, since he's seeing him on Sunday, and on Sunday he has simoni tuma, so mele he's machlet him. And when is he going to be judged? He'll be judged b'shas v'yosil achar Shabbos. Halacha ches. Chosen shenira b'nega. When you see a nega in a chosen, the chosen that has a nega in him, noisnei kol shivas yimei hamishta. He doesn't have to go ahead for shivas yimei hamishta to show it to the kohen. V'chein nira b'bgada v'bebeisei. If there was a nega in his clothes or in his house, ein rei nesen ad achar hamishta. V'chein b'regel. Person that's during the regel and he has a nega is nesenle kol yimei regel, sai for him and sai for his begadim and sai for his house. Shenamo, how do we know that? Shenamo, the pasuk says v'tziva kein opinos habayis v'gemer, that when the kohen comes along to see whether the house has a nega or not, he says take everything out of the house. Why take everything out of the house? Because he doesn't want to be metamif. Knows if he's going to be masger the bias, everything in the bias can be tummy. So in order to avoid having to be matame the kalim that are in the house, he says take the kalim out of the house in order to avoid being matame the kalim, especially klicheres, which klicheres has no tare in a mikvah. As you see, imitina teira the dvar rishus madach, we see that the teira is worried that you shouldn't be matame the kalim in the house, which is not a psa mitzvah, just that the teira was chos al mamena shel yisrael shel yitmu kelov is kal v'cheimel dvar mitzvah. For sure, the teira was chosa that during the Yemei HaMishter or during the Yemei HaRegel, he shouldn't have to go through and become Tomei b'Tumas Negoim. Halacha tes. Ein masgirin v'lei machlitin v'lei petrin, ele b'yem she'yira b'tchila, e b'shvi, e b'yem shleisha. So we've been learning this all the time. In other words, on the first day they come along, that's at that point in time the Kohen says whether he's musger or muchlet. That's what, or potter. So either on that day, or on the 7th day, which is the end of the first week, or on the 13th day, which is the end of the second week. Now, why is 13th day the end of the second week? Because Lepeil, the week ends on the 7th day, and that 7th day counts as the end of the first week and as the beginning of the next week. So the end of the second week ends on the 13th day. This is the halacha. Ein masgirin, you don't put someone into hesger. V'lei machlitin, and you don't establish a person to be a muchlet dikatuma. V'lei petrin, and you don't say that he's potter from his tumah. Ele b'yem she'yira b'tchila. So the kohen sees him on the original day that he saw him, the first day. E b'shvi, or the 7th day after that first day. E b'yem shleisha asur, on the 13th day. B'negoyim shemazkirim em shnei shavuos. Those negoyim, which is 2 weeks. Why up to the 13th day? Neshiyim Shvi Elu Leminyan Shavua Rishon Uleminyan Shavua Sheni B'chol HaNegoyim. The 7th day aside, the 7th of the end of the first week, and the beginning of the next week, Ben B'negi Odom, Ben B'negi Batim Ubgodim, which we'll learn about Behemshech, about Nigi Godim and Nigi Batim. Now, Ein Masgirin B'Teichi Me Hezger. If a person finds himself in a Hezger, there was a nega, he saw a nega, and that nega caused him to be musger. And now he has another nega. So now, that other nega is also a reason for Hezger. So the question is, should the Kohen come along and say, yeah, you're musger for that first nega, now you're also musger for this nega? So he say, no. Ein masgirin b'teichi me hezger. While he's behezger from the first nega, you're not masger for the other nega. And al derech zeh v'lei machlitin, you're not machlit b'teichi me hezger, im neilad le siman hechlet. Whereas he had a hezger, and lepel there was a siman hechlet, and he saw he had a baharis that was the size of a kegris, but it didn't have any simani tuma. And now on the third day he sees simani tuma. So the question is, should we bring the kohen, and the kohen should come along and mach hechlet? So you say no. During the Yimei Hezger, you don't make hechlet. You wait until the end of the week. And also, v'lei machlitin ha-muchlet, im neilad nega acher, if lepel, a person was already muchlet, and now he has another nega, with that nega also could be kohen another din of muchlet. So we say no, v'lei machlitin ha-muchlet, im neilad nega acher, and v'lei masgirin eisei, b'teichi me chalute. In other words, a person has a nega, and that nega causes him to be muchlet. And now he has already another nega, which l'chura that nega should cause him to be masgirin. So we say no, le machlit na muchlit im neilad le nega acher. He has mashal a nega, he has a nega with seir lovin, and now he has another nega with seir lovin. So since he's already a muchlit, we don't start reckoning about the second nega with seir lovin. And al derech zeh v'le masgirin eisi b'teichi me chalute. If he has another nega without seir lovin, so we're not going to start saying he's musger because of the second nega. Im neilad le nega acher shiroi lehezger. That's this din. So if a person already had a nega, and as a result of that nega he was behezger, so we don't go ahead and start being masgerim for another nega. Now that is if he had a nega and he was a muchlet, so we're not going to go ahead and be machlit him for another nega, You're not masgerim in during while he's already a muchlet. If a person l'chatchila had shnei negoim, and the kohen went ahead and saw one nega, and v'chazeh v'rozeh, and then he saw the other nega, and he didn't yet say anything about the first nega. He can't see both of them at the same time. He has to look at each one separately. But he didn't say anything about the first nega until he saw the second nega. So the din is at this one point in time, he says, this is the nega which is causing you to be behezger, and this nega causes you to be behechlet. A muchlet bazeh, musgar bazeh, regardless which one he says first. But as long as he says it together, at the musgar bazeh, muchlet bazeh, bein betchila, whether it's right away in the beginning, bein b'seif shvua rishon at the end of the first week, bein b'seif shvua sheni. So in other words, while he's there and he's saying something about one of the negoim, so at that same time he can speak about the other nega. Masha'inkin, if he's already in a matzav of hezger, or he's already in a matzav of huchlet, so then we don't start reckoning zich with other negoim and to start saying that he should be also a muchlet or should be also a musgar. Once he's a musgar or a muchlet, so that's his matzav until that matzav changes or until the kohen has to come back because it's the end of the week. Then the Rambam says, "Ve'in reyin shnei negoim ka'achas." You can't look at two negoim at the same time, bein b'shnei anoshim bein b'shachot, to see them at the same time. Shnema v'roa kein es hanega. You see the nega. So when you're looking at the nega, you can't look at two negoim at the same time. Side of one person, the side of two people, and then paskin on both negoim at the same time. You have to look at each nega separately. And lepel, if after you saw the first nega, you already said the psak din on that nega, so then you really don't look at the second nega. That's the din of a masgirin, a machlitin, b'teich mehezger, b'teich mehechlet. Masha'inkin, if you didn't say anything and you saw the first nega, and then you saw the second nega, then you could go ahead and paskin and say a din that is musger mitzad this nega and musger and a muchlet mitzad the other nega. Halacha Yudalef. Nogua shebo lekein l'reisei, a nogua that comes to the kein and says, I want you to see my nega. Is leyema leilech v'shuv. He shouldn't say, I'm busy now, and may go and come back. Eleniska klei miyad. That's the chiyuv of the kein right away to go and see the nega of this person. Now, bo lefon b'shnaim, two people came. Is rein and sarishan. So first he sees the first person, that came umazgire petre machlite. He paskins whatever is supposed to be either petre machlite a segre, and then v'chayze v'reyes Hashem. Now in Halacha Yud, in the beginning of Halacha Yud, the Rambam said a mazgirim b'techimei hezger, v'lei machliten b'techimei hezger im noiled le simen hechlet. So the Pashas Advarim is talking about there was noiled le simen hechlet of this nega that he was behezger. Whereas he had a nega and it was put behezger. He's supposed to wait 7 days. Lepel, during those 7 days, there was noiled le simen hechlet. So we say a machliten b'techimei hechlet. And then the Rabbin says, "V'lei machliten hamuchled im neiled le nega acher." Now, what about if a person was neiled le nega acher, which is sarach hechlet, and that was only b'teich hamuzgar? In other words, he had a nega, he has a nega, and that nega caused him to be muzgar. Now, that nega itself, if it was neiled b'simoni, that it should be tamei, so you wait till the end of the week. But what happens if you had a new nega, and that nega has already a sar loven? So here is machlitin b'teichi mehezger. So that the Ram doesn't say you don't do. The Ram says you're not mazgirin b'teichi mehezger. You're not machlit b'teichi mehezger im neiled le'simen hechlet, which means neiled le'simen hechlet in the nega which caused hezger, and also a machlitin b'teichi le'machlitin amuchlit. But the diuk advarim is that if this person was already was a musgar, and now is neiled le'nega acher, which could cause him to be a muchlit, so then you are machlitin b'teichi mehezger, because since it's a more chomer dikatuma, so therefore even though and it's a new nega, so the din is machlitin b'teichi mehezger. It's not mefurish in Rambam, but that's the diuk of Lashon Haram. Halacha Yud Beis Eina kein zokek levakesh tachas atzila yodav shel nagua, which means he doesn't have to start looking into the Beis Hashechi, oy bein pachtov, or in his groin area, a betech hakmotim, or in the places of the folds in his body. Shema shom nega, maybe there's a nega. Shenema lechol mare eine akoin. He only has to see what he sees bepashtus. He doesn't have to go ahead and start looking. Now, you have to understand. I mean, the Rambam said earlier in Perek Vav Halacha Aleph that the Beis Hashechi or the kmotim shebebeten, those places that are not megula, those places bechlal, even if there is a nega, it's not a nega. It's not only he's not zokuk levakish. In other words, what would be the tzir over here? The tzir over here is mashal. The Ram Baruch says he has a nega l'mashal near the Beis Hashechi, and that nega is not a kashir. Now, if he's going to start looking in the Beis Hashechi over there, maybe it'll be mashlim kashir. So he says no, ein akein zokuk levakish tachas atzil yadav shel nagua, because he doesn't have to be choishish. That's what it sounds like. But the Rambam says even if it's there, it's not mitzvah, because it's the mekamis that's a mechusish beguf, which is not mitzvah. That's why I don't have it so clearly over here. Nochamal ein akein zokuk levakish tachas atzil yadav shel nagua. He doesn't have to start looking there. A bein pachtov, a b'teich hakmotim, shema shema nega, shenema lechol mare ein akein. That's din number one when he's looking for the negoim. V'chein b'hoifech kuli loven, a person that had a nega and he was already established that he had a nega, and then he was heifech kuli loven. So now he has to be established that he's Torah. Now the question is he taka heifech kuli loven? So that he has to be inspected to see that he was heifech kuli loven. So the ketzed yamel ufnei akoyin, to stand in front of the king when he's a heifech kuli loven, is im ishu, if he's an ish, is he nira orim, he's seen without clothes, v'oimed ko'ider, u'kemesik zesim, he's standing like an oider. Oider is the person that's working in the field, so he spreads his legs a little bit, u'kemesik zesim, and that he's cutting off olives. So he's cutting off olives, so he's raising his hands a little bit. So since he's raising his hands, so therefore you could see, in other words, his arms are down on the side, so you can't see the entire arm, which is touching the body. Masha'inkin, if he's raising his hands, basic zaysim, so his armpits are still covered. His armpits are still covered. But on the other hand, the other parts of his arm are already uncovered. And al derech zed, between his legs, so it's a little bit open, so therefore somewhat between his legs can be seen. But masha'inkin, mamish, in the groin area, the pashas over there, it's not seen. That's the pashas advar. That's if it's an ish. Now, v'im ishehi, if it's a woman, is also niris aruma, she's also seen aruma, and v'yesheves, as she sits, ka'ireches, as someone that's preparing dough, and at that point in time also it's brought down that she spreads her legs somewhat but on the other hand, she doesn't spread her legs as much as someone that's spreading his legs when he's working in the field. So the spreading of the legs of the ireches is less than spreading the legs of someone that's an oider, and ukeminika is beno, and she's also giving her son, she's nursing her son. Now we learned before that tachas adad is considered mikemis amechusim. Now when a woman is nursing her son, it's brought down, so she raises her dad a little bit in order to give it to her son. So Mamela, since it's a little bit raised, so that area which would be raised while she's nursing her son, that's not considered Mekei Mastorim. So Mamela Nochamo. So we're dealing with an Isha, she Sheves Keireches Ukeminikes Beno, and also Keireges Ba'imdim, like a woman that's weaving while they're standing, and they use certain instruments to weave. Shemagbas is Yoda Hayimonis Achi Yigala Beis Hashechi. So over there by the woman, sounds like over here, that the Beis HaShechi of the woman, the right Beis HaShechi, is not considered Beis HaStar. That's what comes out. That's what the Ramar brings from the Tesus Yontif. So, Im Hoya HaNega Nirabem, Bizman She'neim Dem Kach, Arei Ze Tomei. Vim Ein Nirabem She'neim Dem Bei, Kach is Einis Kotelei. So that's this din. That's this din. So, Nochamol. So we're saying over here that there's a din, B'negeya, the din of Nisapa Kula Love, and it's understandable. You have a person that had a nega in a certain area in his body, and now you have to establish now the area, the nega spread. Now we have to establish that this person has a nega over his entire body, which is shayches to be mistami bin goyim. So therefore he's Eimid Arum, and Mamela he has to be seen whether or not he's completely covered with the nega. The nega spread into entire his body, and then you have to know which position he should be standing to know which part of the body has to be kuli loven in order that it should be having in the sapa kuli loven. And al derel zo isha. So now we're saying that the isha has to be standing koider ukemesik zeisim, and the isha is sitting oireches and minikes beno, and the oireches beimdim, and then magbas is yoda. So that's the position that she has to be standing in order to be inspected whether or not she was kuli loven. Now when you're talking about seeing a nega itself, l'chura, a person has a nega. So the pashtus advarim would be you'd show the person the nega. You show the kohen the nega. You don't have to uncover yourself completely for the kohen to check whether there's other negoim on the rest of your body. The pashtus. Pashtus, you have to show him the nega. So what would be this idea? That would be a little hard to understand. The beginning of Allah Yud Beis. Eina kohen zokuk levakish tachas atzili yodav shenegua to see shemesh sham nega. I mean, what's bechlal the musik of being mevakish? You mevakish shemesh sham nega. When a person comes along and shows you the nega, you look at the nega. You have to start being mevakish and nega. So therefore, the Ram Marach writes that the pshat is that there's a nega near this area, and the question is whether or not the nega extends further. So therefore, you don't have to look further. That's how he writes pshat. He brings from a farshim. Not so clear. The pashas advarim would be ki'ilu that when a person comes along and says he's a nega, so we're choshish, maybe there's negoim in other places as well. So therefore he has to be nivdak whether there's negoim. Notice there's two dinim. One din is he has to see the nega, and another din that has to be nivdak to see if he has negoim. And under that the Rambam is saying that these mekemis hamechusim, those are the places that you don't have to be nivdak. That would be lechura, the pashtus haloshin of the Rambam. But I'll call upon him. So the Rambam is saying those places which are those in that position, the areas that are revealed in that position. So then that places is Negea the Nega, and Negea also in the Sapach Kulilovan, Mashenk in those places which are not revealed when the man or the woman are in these positions. So those areas are not Negea, Sai, Negea, Negoim, and Sai, Negea, and the Sapach Kulilovan. That's the Pashtus Hadvarim of the Rambam. Now it comes out also, Psachidish, that the Rambam brings from Tesis Yontiv, that Benegea woman, there's a difference between her right hand and a right armpit and a left armpit. Because Lepel, when she's being regas ba'imdim, so she raises her right arm, in order to weave, and that would be a makim agoli. So the right armpit is a makim agoli, and the left armpit is not a makim agoli. That's what comes out. Although the Rambam doesn't say it clearly, but that's l'chura what it comes out from the Rambam. That's the number one. Then the Rambam says, "Shem sha'odam nira lenigay," just like where a person is seen, there's the position that a person is seen in order to see what kind of negoyim he has. is kachu nirel taglachta. In that same position, when he needs a taglachas, the taglachas which we're going to learn behemshech, that the mitzayir b'shas atara needs a taglachas, so he has to be in that position for the taglachas. She'im lo yiro seir b'chol psori, kshiamid orum, ka'oider u'kemoisek, or ksheteshe v'yisha k'meshu b'yarnu, if there was a taglachas, and lepel, when this man or woman is standing in this position that was just mentioned, and at that point in time there's no longer any hair, you took off all the hair that's visible in that position, is a rezu taglachas kshera. That's considered a taglachas kshera. Ve'ena kein zokuk l'chapis b'shara mekemis. He doesn't have to start looking in any other areas in the body which are not visible in these positions that you mentioned. Shem and nisha b'mseir. Aval pi shehu tzorech l'galech hakil. Be'emes, he's supposed to be magalech hakil. Kimeshi is bar. So be'emes, the in of taglachas really is koilel also the areas which are not visible in this position. But lepel, if she is in this position, or he is in this position, and there was a full taglachas of everything that's visible, is ein tzorech l'chapes b'shara mekemis. So tzorech here, what's the difference that we say that ein hakein zokuk l'chapes b'shara mekemis, shemer nisher b'mseir, but on the other hand, tzorech l'galech hakil k'meshi yizbor. On one hand, he's saying tzorech l'galech hakil k'meshi yizbor, that you have to with galech, even the sari says over there, Beis Erva and Beis Hashechi, all the cyrus has to be galech. But on the other hand, I'm saying over here that ein hakein zorech l'chapes b'shara mekemis. The pashas advarim would be like kilu b'diavad if lepel this is the position. So memela that taglachas is considered a taglachas kshera. So adayin tzorech here.